I think we're seeing a shift away from planned budgetary cyclical spending on media technology to spending being driven by pressing particular problems or pain points, if you like, which arise in the day-to-day operations of video distributors. I think this is an impact from the rising cost of content, impacting everything else in the cost base, media technology spend being one of them. And when we've spoken to buyers over the last 12 to 18 months, I think one of the things that's really come through is that spending tends to be triggered by particular problems, particular issues. Some of the most pressing ones obviously came about as a result of the pandemic and the changes in working conditions brought about by global lockdowns.
One thing that I think we've seen through our in-depth research of media marketing trends is that buyers simply won't look at a product until they've identified that that product can solve a particular problem. And of course, in order to sell that problem, it's a matter of waiting until the buyer's identified that they've got that problem, that they've got that pain to be solved. And so it's really important for technology suppliers to make very clear what kind of problems they can address, specific problems, business-driven problems, so that the buyers will latch onto that when that problem crops up in their own business.
I think if you're a vendor, it's not a case of just trying to look at the overall market, my total addressable market. I mean, that's becoming relatively meaningless in some ways. I think you need to be looking for trying to identify where cohorts of individual buyers are investing for similar reasons. It might not be the most obvious thing to look for at first. But if we take the case of OVPs, we can see particular subsegments of OVPs becoming very commonly used for quite similar use cases. I mean, there's a segment pretty much dedicated to live streaming sports.
It continues to surprise us how often we find that vendors approach the market in a very traditional manner, looking at broadcasters and pay TV operators and OTT platforms rather monolithically. What we find is that there's very often something underlying that ties together groups of personas and underlying problems and use cases that span across those different types of delivery platforms much more than they do link those same companies together based on whether they transmit on satellite or whether they happen to own linear channels. It's a very different way of looking at the market. It's looking at the underlying rationale for doing something rather than the business history of the companies.